Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing a solubility test and look at the periodic trends based off of that solubility test to see how the groupings of each of those families in the periodic table correlate to very similar chemical properties. Okay, so we'll begin with you will have a lab worksheet that you're going to be doing as I go on with this video. And in the shot, you are going to see the little well, or this little well tray that I have, and I have the nice little chemicals on it, so that way you'll see which ones I am going to be, which aqueous solutions I'm going to be mixing together. Okay. Now, here are going to be all my chemicals. I will say the names of each of them. You will need to determine which ones they are, and then lastly, before I begin, I just want to make sure that I'm pointing out all of the safety features that I'm doing with this because I'm working with sulfuric acid, which is highly corrosive, and so I want to make sure that I have my goggles, my lab jacket, and my gloves on throughout this time. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. A couple of things that I do want to go over prior to our lab when filling out your lab worksheet. Where you see a soluble solution. Soluble means that the solution dissolves completely into the water and it looks like an aqueous solution or a liquid, you are going to write S. If there is some precipitants, so some insoluble stuff, some non-insoluble stuff in the water, you are going, or in the solution, you're going to write slightly soluble. And lastly, if once I mix the two in together and there's a thing that does not mix into it, it is going to be labeled insoluble. All right, once again, insoluble just means doesn't mix together. Okay, so let's get started. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my salts, my aqueous salts first. So I'm going to put each of them in their designated areas. So first, I'm going to start off with my magnesium nitrate. All right, so all of the wells are approximately halfway filled, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my sulfuric acid, my sodium carbonate, and my potassium chromate into each of these wells. All right, so let's first start off with my sulfuric acid. Once again, this is highly corrosive, so I want to make sure that I am being safe with this. So sulfuric acid going into magnesium nitrate. All right, write down anything that you may see. Next up, sulfuric acid in calcium nitrate. Write down anything that you might see. Next up, strontium nitrate with sulfuric acid. All right. After that, barium nitrate. And sulfuric acid. And lastly, my unknowns. All right. So that is going to be my sulfuric acid. Now let's go to my sodium carbonate. All right, sodium carbonate with magnesium nitrate. Okay. Next up, sodium nitrate and calcium nitrate. Next up, sodium carbonate and strontium nitrate. Next up, sodium carbonate and barium nitrate. go. Alrighty, and lastly, my unknown. All right, so that is my sodium carbonate. Write down your observations. And lastly, we are going to move on to my potassium carbonate, or chromate, my bad. All right, let's move on. Potassium chromate with magnesium nitrate. This one's going to be a little bit harder to see because it's yellow, but you'll definitely see a difference. All right. Calcium nitrate and potassium carbonate. Alrighty. Strontium nitrate. Okay. Next up, barium nitrate. And lastly, my unknown. Okay, so once again, if you could see right through it, that means that it is soluble. If it kind of barely kind of looks like there's some stuff in it, that means it's slightly soluble. All right, so I'll mix some of that stuff up with a little toothpick. All right. So if there's barely any white stuff in there, or slightly, that'll be slightly soluble. And if it's completely white, that means it's fully soluble. But at this point, you should have enough information in order to complete that lab. And so thanks for watching, and I hope you've learned something today. Make sure that you compare the groups and families of these, the periods and the families of these particular salts. All right, that'll be kind of important. Other than that, thanks very much for joining, and I'll see you later on.